Hello, and welcome to the second half of Applying What We Know by Eugene Halliday. He often illustrated his thoughts throughout his lectures, and in this representation, we've selected certain of his images to accompany the text. Applying What We Know, Part 2. There is a metaphysical urge to apply more efficiency. How and why, you may ask, can this be done? Firstly, how? The answer is by self-precipitation of the field of the infinite. Now, let us define the field. A field is a zone of influence of a force. Have you got that? A field is a zone of influence of a force. Imagine an infinitely extended field, the zone of influence, which is infinite. Now, how is it going to encapsulate? There's only one possibility. It must move inwards, mustn't it? If it goes out, it won't encapsulate, will it? No. So we have two functions, one called gathering and the other scattering. If you go outwards, disseminating, you throw your seeds that way, you lose them. But if you focus and bring them to a point, you gather them, and they can begin, by your inner concentration, to germinate. Germination, when you do your mung beans and other things, when you get some dry beans and put them in water and wait a bit, a little shoot comes out. Where does it come from? Outside or inside? Well, it comes from inside. But does it? Because in fact, what you are calling inside is the centre of an infinite field, transcending absolutely that little seed. It's inside out, outside in. The field itself has no inner or outer. The concept inner and outer belongs in the time-matter thinking process. You must encapsulate, that is, draw a circle or a sphere, before you can talk about inner or outer. If there's no encapsulation, there's no inner and no outer. So before encapsulation, inner, outer must be used simultaneously or not at all. Now, we've been carried away by mentation, by desire, by body conditions, and we have to remind ourselves that these are not the causative forces. They are inferior forces. The causative force is in the will. So, if we go back, how means by what manner of procedure, and why means for what psychological inherent reason. How means what mechanical procedure shall we use to retain this condition? Their answer is by remembering. Remember. We are members of an infinite continuum of sentient power. Philosophers call it the absolute. In India, they call it Brahma, the infinitely extended sentient power. We have to remember that. Now, we are it. Aham, I, Brahma. That extended power is here intended. This is intention, that is extension. We are all points of intention in an extension. But extension posits intention, and intention fulfills the purpose of extension. To those who drive in, there is a tendency to drive outwards. To drive inwards to individuation is simultaneously to drive outwards to transcendence of the limitation. Individuation is limitation. We individuate to be different, and then we express ourselves to join in with the other difference. Now, by means of a symbol, we can remind ourselves more efficiently and more conveniently than by any other way. Now, I was talking to a Masonic friend of mine last week. He wasn't very well. So I said to him, "Do you do your ashlar exercise?" And he looked at me as if he'd never heard of it. So I reminded him, think of yourself as a cube. Now, sit inside the cube and put a dot there. Call that dot your essential individuation. "Oh, that's a good idea," he said. "Now, think. There is a surface above me. Call it power superior. There is a surface below me. Powers inferior. There are to my right my developed talents, and to the left my undeveloped talents. And in front of me my future, and behind me my past. I am sitting in the middle of this cube with 6 faces." The word 6 is from the same basis as the word existence. To exist is to stand out, and to stand out is to be 6-faced. You do have powers above you, you do have powers below you, you do have talents developed, and you have deficiencies not yet developed. And you have the future and the past. And you are right in the middle of all these 6. So you are the 7th. God rested on the 7th day. You rest on the point of your individuation, not on the point of your empirical ego, but because that is not in the center. And you know, when you draw a circle to represent your being, your skin surface, and a stimulus comes from outside as a response, the response comes from the center and joins the external stimulus. And there is a little rotation. And that is the ground of your egotism. That thing is the peripheral. Your ego is a construct from outside. It's halfway between the innermost true self and the outer world. When the innermost true self and the outer world impinge, they spin and make an ego. The egoic structure is empirical, mentational, temporal, and on the way to materialization. It has no power whatever of itself. All the power that appears to be in it is from the center. It is the interaction. It is like the Freudian self between the id, power, sexual, and the superego, moral power. And here is myself in the middle of the jam. But I've got no egoic self except the interaction of a world precipitated from infinity, reacting with infinity at center. Now, by the means of this cube, I can sit inside it all day. Or I can simplify it like you would empirically and make the cube and then spin it and wait long enough and all the corners will wear off. And you will have a sphere. So to represent this sphere, you just draw a circle on your paper and put a dot in the middle of it. And on the dot in the middle write I. And do a little drawing of an eye. An observer, right in the middle of the circle. That is I. That is the letter I. Now the O round that I is the peripheral interest of the I. It is as far as that I has bothered to interest itself. Your interests go out from you into infinity, to to a distance determined by your self-definition. You define yourself, and you define how far your definition will become effective. And other people are doing the same thing. Now you are precipitating your world without knowing it. You think there is a world, and you go about looking. And, I must understand the world. That is exactly the opposite of what you ought to be doing. What you have to do is understand you. Why? For what reason are you precipitating precisely this kind of world? This kind of world which you precipitate is an egoic world. Why are you making it this shape and not that shape? You have a motive in you. There is great non-dualistic rule if you get into trouble. Don't bother about the trouble, bother about you. Say, what am I doing? What is my appetite in this situation that has led me unthinkingly into the position where I have to think? The Ma has led Ra. Mara means death. Rama means wake up and live. When the ancients made mantras like that, they made them on purpose, quite deliberately. The whole of non-dualism is in 4 words. Good. These words are Deha, D-E-H-A, Nama, N-A-M-A, Koham, K-O-H-A-M. So we have put an H in the Nama, the hierarchy, Naham, and we have named ourselves. Nama means name. Aham means I. Razinaham, I have named myself. Before that, I divided myself, Deham, from the infinite, to give myself a little elbow room. I must have elbow room if I'm going to do something. So the first word said by the Absolute in the Hindu system of thought was Bhu. Let there be space. B-H-U. Make space. Elbow room. Deham. Divide from the infinite and posit myself. Naham. Name myself. Then Koham. Gather myself. Then Soham. After all, it was only myself. I divided myself from my absoluteness. I named myself as separate. I gathered myself together to the best of my ability. Then if I complete my self-gathering together, what do I find? Nothing except myself. The divider, the namer, the gatherer. Myself. So the whole of the highest philosophy that's ever been written on earth is contained in 4 words. And these words are based on one word, aham, I. Imagine that you never ever in the whole of your existence have or ever will know anything other than you modalizing you. Can you see the truth of that? Never have you ever known anything other than you and the modalities that you, with your appetite, have imposed on you. Now, why should I go looking for enlightenment elsewhere? It is inside. That is what Krishnamurti meant when he said, there aren't any gurus. You are the hidden guru. Find it. It's on the inside. It's you. You are the self-determinate. You're the naughty little boy that stole the ice cream. You did it, but who called it stealing? Except somebody else who wanted the ice cream. We're living in a world where definition, division, have been made by interested appetite. And then these interested appetites have defined situations and put trespassers will be prosecuted, or private keep out, or beware the guard dog. Now, we have to remember, and we cannot remember without a symbol. Why? Well, a symbol condenses fantastical histories of thought. Look at the word God, 3 little letters, G-O-D. Its meaning is consolidated potential self-delivering. First, it consolidates itself, the absolute, and in so doing makes itself into a closure, a seed. That is why the Hebrew samash takes the place of the letter O in English. It is really a hidden secret hierarchy in a seed. And then if you divide it, it will become an oak tree, or anything else you care to mention. A God is a being who is totally self-precipitating, totally self-concealing, totally self-developing. Anyone who can do that is worthy of the name God. That's why Jesus said, "You are all gods." The trouble is, you are what is called dumb, clottish type gods. You don't know that you are gods. Why not? Because you've not been told. You've been told that you are not. Keep that God fellow away over there. Don't you get the idea you are God? That's heresy. But you are God, because absolutely there isn't anything else but God. And where you are, as you are God being you. Does that mean you can do anything stupid you like? No, it does not. Because you can't even think of all the stupidities that you might do because of inertia. Inertia is a terrible enemy. Now, by understanding the nature of the symbol, you can remind yourself economically, daily. Now, the cross in the circle is called the master symbol of all symbols. In all religions, we find it appearing and reappearing over and over again. In Buddhism, it appears as a wheel crossed this way. This way is the George cross. It means balanced power. But if I turn it, it makes an X in the circle, and that means rotary power. The George cross means eternal, noumenal truth that cannot be changed. The one like an Andrew cross, the one like an X in it, means the same truth now spinning, creating time. So the two crosses together, one above the other, the George and the Andrew, symbolize eternity and time. Now, when we get a cross in a circle and understand its meaning, we have saved many, many fat volumes of philosophy and reduced it to one simple symbol. Now, the circle meant woman. And I don't mean terrestrial female on earth. I mean the principle absolute of total receptivity that is called the woman, Sophia, absolute wisdom. Wisdom is their total receptivity. You draw a circle on the paper and you think, this means a woman. But not merely the woman on earth, but the cosmic principle of receptivity. Then we draw the cross and say that he is man. Cross and crutch and the genital organs of the time matter man, they're all symbolized in that little cross. It does not simply mean the appendage of flesh on a time matter body. It means the principle of initiative. When you make that cross, you draw a horizontal and then draw a vertical through it. The horizontal is the principle of passivity, and the vertical is the principle of activity, initiative, decision. And they come into being simultaneously. And that means that the male symbol, a vertical laid on a horizontal, coming to be together simultaneously, is an hermaphrodite. Now, that's a very cunning piece of thought. You find it in the Hebrew name of God, for which Jews would substitute Adonai, Lord. 4 letters, which means he who, she, he. The vertical is male and the horizontal is female, but they're inside the circle, which is female. So it means that the cross symbolizes infinite, absolute, true form, and it's positioned itself as a world with a limit, the circle round it. Now that is called the divine hermaphrodite, the heavenly Sophia, the Messiah, the double-poled will thought. The appetival drive is the circle, and the cross is the form. Now, how many fat books could we write using nothing except that cross in a circle? Actually, an infinity of books we could write. And all the books that have ever been written on philosophy are commentaries on that one symbol. Now, we can say, well, don't let on, we'll disguise it. Take the cross out of the circle, put it underneath. That makes the sign of Venus. And let's pretend that the meaning is different. And then we can fool some other people into thinking that we don't know the thing they know. So we're all going about concealing our intent. Do you know what our intent is? Fulfillment of self-appetite. We're going about secretly doing it and feeling horrible, and amazingly thinking that other people are not doing it. Everybody else is decent. I'm the only criminal. Well, how do you feel about that? We are all going about shot through and through with fundamental appetival sentient power absolute, and we have a formal way of disguising it. No, I'm not a circle, I'm not a void, I'm not pure receptivity. I have form, a cross, an identity, which you must recognize. Now, if you have a business and you go there to see if it's okay, but what if another fellow with another name has gone and starts ordering the girls about, your employees? How would you feel? Pleased? Well, why not? It's just another modality of the absolute. Now, supposing the man was afflicted with a terrible disease called absolute honesty. He came and went there before you did, and he started working very, very hard and got all the girls working very hard, far more efficiently than you did. That would be okay. And he gave you the money and you would forgive him. So, such forgiveness. I'm saying there is no other kind of forgiveness in the whole universe. People pretend there is, but there isn't. Now, by means of this symbol, we can remind ourselves just a little line like that. You could put it on your forehead if you like, and whenever you look at anybody, you look through your symbol. They can feel it, They say, what's he up to? He's doing something unusual, and he's looking at me through a symbol. Now, I tell you this. There was never a great man on earth, from Hercules or anybody else, that was not doing precisely that. And it was that made him what we call great. He never forgot his symbol. Now what we need is a super symbol. Now, we have got one. A cross in a circle. And then we need some other symbols which are derived from it. There is a primary symbol. It means all and nothing, zero. But inside it, where I haven't yet drawn, is the same as outside, which I haven't yet drawn. So the inside and the outside are identical. Now, supposing that it is precipitated by an act of will at right angles to this screen, and we have to account, how did it get there? Some being willed to do it. Now, the original circle, the encapsulator of the universe, was produced in exactly the same way. Some sentient power willed to make a circle, a sphere. Now, a circle is two-dimensional. There's a primary symbol of encapsulation. When you look at it, you can't help feeling that it means inside, outside, inclusion, exclusion. There is something inside there, and there is an infinite beyond. What is enclosed is finite, and what is excluded from the enclosure is infinite. Now, we want to make this into a super symbol. So let's think about it. Funnily enough, before I drew it, do you know, I drew it around an imaginary dot in the middle. Didn't I control the circle by putting a dot and the same distance away, roughly? The I, the observer, posited himself first and then ran round himself. I'm going to put a dot in the middle, and that is the I. When I put that dot in there, can you immediately begin to see that your mind begins to change? You have a symbol there, and the symbol says there is exclusion of infinity, inclusion of finity. And there is a point of reference in the centre. And between that centre and the perivity, I said, because E means to develop, there is going to be a developed relationship between the central point of my precipitate individuality and the environing circle. So that circle now indicates the limits of my environment. But that dot symbolizes me. Now, this is used in astronomy for the symbol of the sun, because there is the sun, and there is the orbit of attendant planets, and it says hierarchy. It says wherever there is a center, something is going round it. And the centre precipitated the circle. Well, that was in my mind before I drew the circle. Now I want to represent activity and passivity. So I draw a vertical through the middle and a horizontal. And I draw my primordial wheel. That is the great wheel of fortune. Well, doesn't fortune mean strength in unity? Fort uni, strength in unity. I now have a circle quartered. When we quarter the circle, we call it a mandala. I said we can start with this master symbol and draw other symbols out of it. I will do that. I will take the circle and take the cross and put it underneath, and that is Venus. I will take the same circle, I'll put the lines above it, like that. But remember that when I drew this on a clay tablet thousands of years ago, then I dropped my tablet and it broke, and there was one bit on one bit and another bit on the other bit, and I didn't know whether it was the same symbol or not, so I modified it and called it Mars. This is merely a differentiator from the Venus. The Mars means war and the Venus means love. I now have, out of my original things, two other things, one meaning love and the other meaning war, and they are derived from my original symbol. So I now want two other symbols. I will take the same thing, I will put a cross above it, but this time I will divide the circle in half, and then I will make what is called a cursive, that is, rapidly written form of the same thing. And I will say, here is my cross, and here is my half circle. Then I will pair this off with another one. Here is my half circle, there is my cross. I have now written Saturn and Jupiter. And we have derided them from the master symbol. We've derived them from the master symbol. So we're not doing too badly, are we? All we're doing is breaking down the mandala into her constituent implications. And now we're going to go further. We've got the circle, which we had, and the dot, and that is the sun. Then we'll take the circle and we'll shadow it. It now has become the moon. And then for economy's sake, don't bother drawing the shaded part, just draw the crescent. We have now got a pair and another pair, 3 pairs. So what we want now is a symbol to mix these together. And this symbol is a half circle and a cross. And we can put the O down there, or what is more convenient for cursive work, we can do this. Yeah? That is Mercury. Mercury is the only unpaired one. We now have a master symbol that tells us exactly how to conduct our lives. The first symbol says this. Remember this is a master symbol. All beings have periphery, all beings are bound. To be is to be bound. The letter Beth, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, means a house, a dwelling, an encapsulation. You are bound in if you exist. All beings have a certain amount of initiative, free energy, the vertical. All beings are passive or receptive to blows from other beings similarly constituted. Therefore, we abstract those and we say we will have a sign for lovingness and a sign for anti-love, making war, a sign for progressive greed and a sign for open-handed generosity, and a sign for radiant giving of light and information to people, constant, and a sign for variability or phasicity, and a sign for all of them together. Now we can arrange these by drawing a circle and cut the circle. And we'll have Jupiter above, Saturn below, the Sun opposite the Moon, and Venus opposite Mars to remind us. The whole thing is Mercury. We now have extended our master symbol. And it says, if there is war, it is because somebody loves something and is trying to get hold of it. If there is love, the person who is doing the loving will fight to defend the thing it loves. If there is radiant, shining, constant, uniform illumination, there will be periodicity, because people can't stand being in the light all the time. And if there is open-handed generosity, everything will disperse to infinity. So there must be a possessive Saturnine grab to stop total dispersal. And if there is grabbing and greed, that greed is in order to be open-handedly generous. Like the multi-millionaire said when questioned about why he got so much money gathered together by such methods. He said, oh, it's in order to be able to create charitable institutions and be generous thereto. And we cannot do anything without doing both of the opposites. And all of them are mixed up continuously by this mercurial spin. So, when we look at our master symbol, is it not obvious that we can remind ourselves of anything whatever that we may do? Can you see that? There's nothing that we've not covered in those symbols. If you take the half circle and then reflex it the other way, that is, the letter S, serpent. The serpent goes this way and then that way and then this way. It means it will go one way and then it will reflex and go another way to fool you. There is no thought, no feeling, no will, no love, no hate that is not contained in that master symbol. If you go to Jersey for your holidays, you find it chiselled all over the paving stones. Every step you take, you're treading on it. I never found anybody there who could tell me who did it, but they're there. Somebody spent an awful lot of time chiselling crosses and circles. It's simply a mnemonic. Now, if you don't remind yourself, you cannot control yourself. You are furnished with the concepts that you acquired before you died. Those ideas that you embraced before you died are your heaven or hell according to their nature. You furnish yourself in life with the ideas to which you adhere. That is your mental furniture. Matter is only energy. Ideas are energy. A formed idea is a symbol. If you have an idea in your head at the point of death and you hang on to that idea, you are the embodied idea. And your wisdom is the wisdom of the thing to which you have brought yourself into identification. And how do you remember? Well, you present yourself with the symbol. How means by what method? The method is you present yourself with the symbol. How do you think they give extreme unction to a dying person? It is to remind him he's a dying person and give him a symbol to hang on to. What is the Tibetan Book of the Dead about, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead? Well, it's nothing but symbols to remind you that at the point of death, what we have to do is find the master concept and work on that one. So that from that one, we can draw all the others, like rabbits out of a hat. And then, if you've got only one concept, you're saved absolutely. What is that supreme concept that guarantees absolute salvation? The concept that you are the mysterious self that you are looking for. People say, oh, lo here and lo there, and the key in the hole is you. What are you looking for? You're looking for you, and you are being misdirected by miseducation. You are looking outside for something, but you are looking for you. Do you know all the power is inside you to precipitate anything whatever that you will to do? Now, it is inside. If you go off to Chimborazo or Cotopaxi or somewhere else to consult a solicitor about what to do, he won't tell you to look at you. He'll rush off to the law books and the precedents and involve himself and you in a long expense. It's a total waste, because the real solution of power and intelligence is you knowing you. There is no other guru. Only you on the inside looking at you about your motives. You are Rama. Rama is God incarnate. You are Ra, you are discriminative intelligence. You are Ma, you are appetite. Do you know that your appetite could be exactly coincident with your discriminative intelligence? Or do you sometimes think that your appetite is a nuisance? Or do you sometimes think that your intelligence is a nuisance for interfering with your membership of the Diners Club? These two are always at war in time, but they're not at war in eternity. Now, we have to use that master symbol in order to remember. And if we put it on a postcard and put it on the desk or in a handbag where we can see it and bother to look at it, and this is the hard bit, and when you have looked at it, recognize it and say, oh, that is that symbol that is supposed to remind me. Why did I put that in my bag? You turn to the Blessed Wife, who's embodied Sophia, and say, what was that card in my wallet? She says, well, you put it in there to remind you, dear, of your intelligence symbol. Oh, that's it, yes. Oh, thank you, darling. The fact is that we are surrounded by symbols that mean absolute salvation. And we know them, but we don't say it and we don't repeat it. We don't repeat the mantra. You don't say, this sign means me, I am the encapsulated one. I am the one of initiative and receptivity. You know, a very good way of keeping vampires out is like that. You know, vampires can't get you unless you invite them in. You know, the midnight horror films. No vampire ever seduced a maiden without her thinking, oh, I wonder what it would be like. That opens the door. What happens to compassion, you ask? What, compassion for vampires? You mean don't stick stakes in their heart? Why not just give them a pint? Yeah. But a pint of what? What deadly concoction have you got at the back of your mind? Well, you're trying to drag vampires into not being vampires, aren't you? You're an undisguised do-gooder when you say that. That's one of the biggest poisons in the world, because it's not fair on vampires. Do you know there are fishers which go for a ride by sticking themselves on sharks and so on? Yeah, they go for rides thousands of miles. If you say to them, don't do that, you are imposing on Brother Shark. They say, yeah. Does he know? Of course he does, because when he gets near a shallow place with a rock, he tries to scrape me off. So sucker fishers, yeah, well, I leave. I leave then and until he's finished, and then I'll go back. Would you believe this? It is said in the very highest philosophies, there is no good and there is no evil but relativeness to somebody making a definition. Do you like to think you are a nice fellow who would do good to a vampire? But really, what you're doing is you're trying to drag that vampire into not sucking your blood. You know, you give him a pint of bitter and hope he won't gulp your blood. I can assure you all the vampires I've ever met know the difference between beer and blood, and money and baccy, and women and song. Otherwise, they're not fit to be called vampires. This is a terrible heresy, this attempt to identify with the do-gooder, who simply wants to reform all the enemies and make them into friends so he can have his own way and remove conflict. That is nirvana. That is pralaya. That is absolute quiescence. That is non-existence. That is no world. Well, how do you feel about that? Do you still want to give the vampire a pint of bitter? Or would you rather wake up and don't fall for vampire propaganda? Right. We've got a master symbol, and we have to use it. Not just 10 minutes a day, but all day. All the times we are awake, and if possible, extend it into sleep. We are to remember that we are the absolute ourselves, modalized in a specific way of our existence. Every good is an evil in another place. Every evil is a good. The idea that goods have to kill evils and get rid of them is utter rubbish. We have to go back. We are talking about how to turn theoretical, intelligent knowledge into activity so that we don't behave stupidly. We are not 1 minute greedy and grabbing and the next sloppily generous to compensate and quieten our conscience. We're not 1 minute making love and the next making war. We're not 1 minute shining lights and the next obscuring them. We are doing all simultaneously in perfect balance. And the sign of that perfect balance is Mercury. Mercury, the Roman, is the Greek Hermes, which is Tahuti, which is the Messiah of the Hebrews. The perfect balance of all powers simultaneously co-held together. Does it sound like hard work to get it? Only for one reason: inertia. You've got habits of body, habits of emotional attitudes, habits of time thinking, mentation, habits of conceptual adherence. Like, I am a dualist, I am a non-dualist. But no habits of free initiative. You can't have a habit of that. For that one, you have to gather yourself together and decide. How does it feel? I will let you go away and think about it.